This is no support of Alia or no support of troll, but understand that when you are on a set surrounded by so many people and you are upcoming at your career, your brain is at a fire signal. What is causing the fear? The minute you answer that question, what is causing the fear, that's your answer itself. The minute you're about to land, you will have those half a second to realize that, oh, this has gone wrong.
So, for example, how do you find your sense of purpose when your performances are designed to make somebody else look like the hero?
We are conditioned as from childhood to please our relatives,
Yes.
to please our elders, to say yes to everything, to do it just because you're told to do it, but not explained why you're supposed to do it.
Hi, everybody. Today we are with Sanubel. She is one of India's most recognized stunt performers who's been a part of over 200 Bollywood films. She is also a human performance architect, mentoring other actors and performers, as well as high net worth individuals. She is also an aesthetic designer, and you can kind of figure that from the arrangement of things over here. So, yeah, thank you for being here, Sanubel.
My pleasure. Thank you, Hema.
Would like to start by asking you that, well, none of us can be entirely fearless. So, how do we learn to work with fear rather than against it?
Well, fear is a very important, crucial part of your life. I mean, especially for me as a stunt artist, fear is my good friend also. It's not my enemy. And where I sense there is fear in performing a particular stunt, fear is not fear for me, but I see it as a pocket of improvement, a space, a room where the improvement needs to happen or more of attention needs to be. And that is exactly where I also look in those dark areas of the stunt. So a stunt may look for a 3 second, which is perfect on screen, jumping off and things like that. But when you're actually doing it and when you're pre-planning it, that's exactly where the fear steps in. It's the fear is not about when you're doing it. The fear is about whilst you're preparing for it. That is exactly those dark spots that you need to focus on. So when you feel fearful about a situation, understand that there is nothing wrong with it. In fact, all you need is a little more attention to it. You need to put in more focus because that's your gray area that you need to worry about, or not worry about, but just focus more about.
So, the improvement bit that you mentioned, is that something that happens in incremental shifts? So, since you mentor as well, and we were just speaking about it before
Yes.
this recording, that as kids, we used to do these little experiments, try to jump across 2 steps and then across 4 steps. So, is that something that happens in incremental shifts? And is that how you build your tolerance towards fear as well?
Well, fear is something that you need to kind of face it. And face it in the sense not bang on face it face to face. You have to understand it. The more you break it down into understanding it, the less it becomes fear. The more it becomes an understanding, the more it gives you a room for improvement. So you have to see it as a scope of your self improvement, like a personality development state rather than a fear state. So when you understand that, you will automatically start taking those steps towards it. So first step is self reflection as to what is causing the fear. And then when you realize it's just what is causing the fear, the minute you answer that question, what is causing the fear, that's your answer itself. And that's exactly a first step of moving forward towards it.
And when you do the self reflection to understand what's causing it, do you also realize that fear is linked to several other emotions?
Well, fear is necessary for survival. Fear is our primal instinct. Fight or flight response comes from that. It's meant to keep you alive. It's meant to, keep you safe, keep you protected. So fear is not a bad thing. That's what people should first understand what is fear. And yes, coming to answer your point, yes, absolutely. I believe that, you need to kind of dwell between the two. First, understand fight or flight is needed, which version is needed, and how you adapt and how you, kind of react to it is what matters. So yes, your mental state needs to be more productive towards fear rather than aversive from fear.
As you mentioned, fear is not bad in itself. In fact, it's a survival instinct. When do we realize, or when should we say, okay, this has crossed the line and has moved into the anxiety zone, which does require intervention?
Yes, because you will understand that this is beyond your control. You will understand that, yes, the threat, fear kind of represents a threat,
Right.
threat to your survival. So the minute you understand that you are not able to kind of, this is a real threat. An elephant charging in front of you is a real threat. And yes, in that situation, the only thing and the wisest thing to do is not to run but to stand still. Though it may sound counterproductive, but this is exactly how it is supposed to be. So you see, you have to understand, and when it raises into anxiety, also, you have to make sure that your nervous system is regulated to pick the most appropriate choice. Now, in a high risk category, for example, stunt category, yes, there are endless number of things that can go wrong even after you having it cross checked it 10 times and pre-planned it 10 times, thought through it 10 times. So within that fraction of a second, you need to make that correct decision. So let's say if your landing is, you will realize it. The minute you're about to land, you will have those half a second to realize that, oh, this has gone wrong. In that half second, you have a choice between panic and you have a choice between safeguarding yourself. That when your nervous system is very regulated and your mind is calm and focused, you will choose exactly not fear and anxiety, fear that is leading to anxiety and breaking your bone, but you will lead it to, oh, and this is how I protect my body. Your instinct, your survival, your training. And it also comes with a lot of training. It doesn't happen as a matter of mind choice. It also comes with a lot of training. And at that, within that half second before the fall, that half second, you know. And when you know, you have to kind of make that second choice, although you did not train for it. For those 10 rehearsals that you did. That crucial difference is very important. And that is where your nervous system and your mental space comes into play.
So when things go wrong, as you just described, how do you recover from that emotionally rather than physically? Physically is another
Yes.
space altogether.
So things, when they go wrong, you need to understand that, yes, it does take an emotional impact. You have to accept it. The faster you accept it, the better. You have to stop victimizing yourself. Yes, you could be the victim, but you have to stop victimizing yourself and villainizing the scenario, the situation, or the opposite, whatever is in front of you, be it a person, place, event, or anything. You gotta stop doing that. You gotta be in full acceptance of it. Point one, how to deal with it emotionally, be in full acceptance of it. No victimizing yourself. And at the same time, adapt towards learning from it. You learn and you grow out of it rather than you get drained into it. That's the only way up. So even if you get drained into it, let's say you waste a good amount of time, which I think is very important, and then you still have, this is the way up. So be smart and pick the easy way up emotionally.
So, as you said, we shouldn't villainize the situation, and I think that's very important, even in our formative years. When
Absolutely.
yes, when we are kids and we get hurt, the usual reaction of parents is let's hit the table or hit whatever hurt us. I think that
Correct.
subconsciously trains us to sort of
Put it on project
exactly.
it on the opposite thing
Yes.
versus accept, oh, I shouldn't have done this. The table was in its place. I shouldn't have banged my head on it. I should have been more careful.
Yes.
So
does that also form a part of your formative training?
yes, it does. It actually does. Parents, and it's just a lot of conditioning also that you need to. It's not about how parents condition you. Yes, of course, they are parents and they are, dealing with their own things along with raising a child. But I think it is your own conditioning. It is your own awareness that you need to, step into. And you need to understand with your own awareness that, is it me or is it the table? So you need to start becoming the adult mind and not continue being in the child emotional state of constantly villainizing the opposite subject.
And again, how do we draw the line between that and not indulging in too much self blame either?
Well, that's exactly where you are not supposed to be stuck in that situation. The first step is acceptance, and from acceptance, we move ahead. We learn and we move ahead. We don't be stuck in the acceptance. Acceptance is just point one. Oh, yeah, I should have looked down and walked and I wouldn't have tripped the step. Simple. That's acceptance. Now, moving on immediately is I better take care of the steps.
Mm.
I better not wear stilettos on a netty step and next time walk down. I'd rather just remove them, pull them in my hand, and confidently walk down.
Mhm.
That's moving on. That's coming to the solution. That's exactly how you need to be in rather than just being stuck on acceptance.
Mm. Mhm. So I think it's also more of, retrospective vision versus, a forward-looking vision as
Yes,
well.
absolutely.
Yes.
You need to have a forward looking vision
Mhm.
because that is exactly what will help you move on, what will help you grow, what
Mhm.
will help you see possibilities. That is how your brain will understand that, oh, it's not that I need to be stuck because this is how your brain learns. It learns via experiences. So, conditioning is also when you want to reverse certain conditionings that you've been brought up with.
Mhm.
This is the only way to do it, where you
Mhm.
tell your brain that, look, these are the also possible other scenarios. And look, this is a possible solution. So next time if I did this wouldn't happen.
Mhm.
And the brain registers.
Mhm.
The brain accepts. If the brain can accept negativity, it also accepts positivity.
Positivity.
This is how the brain learns. So you've got to lead your own self, your own mind with possible future steps. With possible, oh, if I did this wouldn't have happened. Brilliant. Learned. Move on.
I think this was a very interesting point because we always talk about triggers in a negative sense, but you said that the brain also learns positivity, like
Absolutely.
glimmers,
Absolutely.
and I think it's important to hold on to these as well. So, do you think some practices like journaling, gratitude journaling, for instance, helps us hold on to that positivity?
It's a conscious state of joy
Okay.
that you also need to choose on. Yes, journaling helps,
Mhm.
meditation helps, breath work helps, big time it helps, exercising helps. Exercise. Even if you don't go to a gym, you don't have a subscription on a gym, just 15 minutes exercise at home. Basic exercises. You don't need a gym membership, you don't need weights, you don't need any of it. Just do basic exercises, but do them because that is exactly the way your body is energized with the serotonin that's released from your system. There, your state of mind changes. You feel more calmer, you feel more happier, your muscles are more worked, and automatically the serotonin released in your bloodstream makes you feel happy. It's a happy hormone. So, also, you got to choose the amygdala in the brain needs to understand that it shouldn't always be on the fight flight response. So, choosing joy deliberately, it's a choice. It's not an emotion that makes you feel good, but it's a choice that you make towards that emotion. Choose joy in inevitably every situation, and that's exactly how your mind starts choosing positivity, starts seeing the solution side of everything rather than the problem side of it and the sad side of it. So this is a very clear choice that anyone can make for themselves.
As you said, going back to the basics, it doesn't have to be a fancy gym membership. I think it reminds me of the first therapy session in the movie Dear Zindagi, where he says,
Yes.
it doesn't have to be something difficult.
True.
So how do we train ourselves or unlearn
Mhm.
this notion that we have to do something difficult in order to feel purposeful?
Well, this is a very crux part where the childhood conditioning also matters.
Okay.
That you have to work hard to achieve this. Certain times in life, yes, you do have to work hard. I mean, it's sometimes it's not easy, sometimes it is difficult, agreed. But you also have to understand that not everything has to become difficult for it to feel purposeful, for it to feel achieved, for it to feel the joy. Because then your conditioning becomes as a child that if I have not worked hard enough, I don't deserve it. No, you do. You deserve happiness and you don't need to work very hard for it. It's a choice, it's a mental state. And there are several things that can make you feel calmer and happy about yourself. So, you see, this is where it matters. It comes a little deep rooted from the childhood.
And speaking about this sense of purpose, so for example, how do you find your sense of purpose when your performances are designed to make somebody else look like the hero?
Well, I don't understand why this has become a national issue to start with, but honestly, I am a stunt artist. Okay, my job is to be a ghost protocol, like the real life Tom Cruise ghost protocol, get the job done and not be seen because this is exactly the job. Now, for example, a makeup artist, like every shoot has a makeup artist, a hairdresser, every scene has a crying scene, even a dead body scene has got a makeup artist doing makeup on it. The makeup artist is not shown in the movie, obviously, because that's not cinema, that's not filmmaking. So, filmmaking is basically a team of people. So now, if every team member starts screaming, "Oh, but I was not seen in the movie," I mean, the purpose of the movie is lost. That's exactly not what we are filmmaking for. So, yes, this is also, I'm also a part of the team, and this is my job. I do the most impossible stunts and without anyone knowing it, and that's exactly my job profile. When things are absolutely difficult and impossible to achieve, I'm the person that they call.
Coming back to your job profile, does it also sort of numb you to day experiences, or it makes day to day experiences even more, I would say, it makes you more vulnerable to them?
Neither. I am at a very neutral space.
Okay.
So, you have to understand this on off switch between your life also.
Yes.
So, when I'm performing stunts, I am not thinking about my beloved cat or my mom or my loved ones or anything in the world. I know they are loved, they're taken care of, and I'm, like I have, sorted it for themselves. So, you need to understand that when you're doing something which is high risk, you need to switch off the emotional side. You need to understand, you need to develop a switch and mentally disconnect it every time when you're doing something which is high performative, like a stunt or, things like that. And then you need to switch it off also.
Right.
You need to understand that that was not permanence. And you need to switch it off after it's done. And when you come back home, you need to understand that this is also life. So there is a very thin line, a thin balance, a mental state balance that, you need to learn to cultivate with your work atmosphere versus, that's what it is called, the work life balance.
Exactly. Yes. So there are a lot of people who say that work life balance is a myth because, they have these intrusive thoughts about work during their, maybe just after getting back home or trying to sleep even. Do you have any tips to sort of maintain that balance or to create that emotional distance?
Yes, I think in a broad spectrum perspective for different genres of work, yes, I would say people, we need to understand that the minute you step into your house, or the minute I would step into from a life risk stunt, let's say I jumped off a building and glass breaks and everything, and that is high adrenaline, high of cortisol, high of everything shooting in my system. But the minute it is done, the minute it is perfect, the minute we did a retake, after that it's perfect, all of it. Then it's done. Then I'm removing my makeup. So I've almost worked for 16 hours. I'm still on my way home for another hour. I'm exhausted to some different level. So at that point in time, I would not straight rush into the house. I'd sit in my car, switched on the AC, sat in my car when I parked it, breath. Simple breaths, like, the box breathing system, that really helps. Like, breathe in 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds, exhale 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds. Do that for at least 5 times, and that regulates your nervous system, your vagus nerve. It calms down, your parasympathetic system kicks in, and it calms your system down. The minute your system is calmed down, you understand that line that I was talking about. You come to that stage where you know that this is no longer a threat. Yes, we did something which was high performative, high intensity, and high risk, but now that is done. So, this kind of teaches the amygdala in the brain, also the breath kind of really teaches the amygdala and the breath in the mind to calm down. When you calm down, you enter your space. That's exactly what you do. And I also take long showers after that. Sorry, I mean, I feel bad about wasting water, but yes, I do take long showers then.
It's a priority.
It's necessity.
So, when you speak about training the amygdala, do you think your profession naturally gives you the opportunity to create these new neural pathways via new experiences? And is that something we can sort of replicate regardless of our fields?
Yes, I think it's not only related to my profession or the experiences that I
Yes.
have. Anybody can do that. Anybody, a simple 9 to 5 office worker can do that. A clerical job worker can do that. Somebody with investment banking can do that. Anybody can do that. It is just that you have to understand how to do that.
And you also train other actors.
Yes.
So do these other actors come from various backgrounds, and are there sort of some exercises to calibrate them or bring them to the same page?
Absolutely. Yes. So it really matters because they all come from different backgrounds.
Yes.
Not everybody is from one specific background. Some are privileged, some are not privileged. And you see, everybody has to perform.
Yes.
So, yes, I train not just actors, but a lot of different people from very different broad spectrums of life, and I train them from the physical body towards also letting them understand their mind towards the actual body on set. So actors, yes, it works a lot because they need to understand that the emotion to perform before the stunt versus after the stunt, the body language, because they have not performed it. So their body naturally is not in that high cortisol adrenaline zone where they react in that format. So they need to be a little prepped, a little visualized, a little back play of the stunt done. Look, this is how, and we cut it over here just before the drop sequence. We drop you from like 2 feet. You just jump from 2 feet, so your face is captured in the camera from the close up, and this is the emotion we are looking for. So yes, kind of mentally preparing them and guiding them towards the correct body language to follow through. Obviously, it's filmmaking, it's supposed to look the actor has done it, and this is exactly the job. I think people should normalize this also, because I mean, poor actors are getting trolled for not doing their stunts, but they are not supposed to do it.
Yes.
So, I mean, tomorrow actor will be trolled for not doing their makeup. It's just the same thing, you see. So I think this should also become very common, that yes, actors are not supposed to perform stunts, and no, it's not cool for an actor to do the stunt, because that requires years of training and not just a day of doing it. So yes, this is exactly how it's important to train them, to teach them, to make them also understand and then perform. It changes the body language on camera. It changes that emotion that the director is trying to catch in the camera, is what comes.
I think that also brings us to designation, because we tend to, whenever there's this illusion of control, we try to multitask and do it all. So for example, from the standpoint of an actor, they are not expected to do all of this because they don't go through that training. There's no need to multitask. It's okay to delegate. So how do you let go of that illusion of control? I'm talking also from the point of view of the actor. Like, let's just leave it to the experts.
Many actors are grounded enough to understand that, many are not. That's how they break their legs. But when every time you hear an actress getting injured or an actor getting injured, is because of this reason. And yeah, so firstly, we need to understand what our capacities are. So my capacity may not be for acting. I may not be a good actor. That I should be very comfortable with. So, all our stunts, like let's say all our actors, especially in Indian cinema, is expected to do everything. And anything that a public is not aware of becomes a troll for the poor actor. And I'm like, why? Why? There is a whole team. There's a whole team into filmmaking. And I think people need to become more aware. The more awareness spreads, the more of this trying to control every situation, trying to control every scenario is going to reduce. The load is going to reduce, because, yes, it's acceptance. It's an actor's job to act. The actor's job is not to paint the set. The actor's job is not to do their own hair. You will need a hairstylist, especially when you're doing. Now there will be many women and many, probably, let's say, some Instagrammers who are doing their own hair. Now they cannot troll an actress for not doing her own hair in every single scene of the movie. It's just that. But she's like, oh, but am I supposed to focus on my lines, my acting, my rehearsing, following the character and following in the movie, because that is exactly what I'm supposed to do? Or am I supposed to do the hair, makeup, clothes, costume, dressing, everything, stunts? So you see, the expectation is unreal. This expectation needs to, come down to awareness. That's exactly where people will also stop multitasking. So you need to understand your role, accept it fully, and things that you can't do, there is no shame of saying no. No shame of saying no. I can say no to a stunt in front of an entire crew of 200 people. If the stunt is wrong or if it's not correctly rigged, I will stand up and I will say no. Please, let's re-rig this. This is the thing that I'm not comfortable with. Let's re-rig it and then let's do it. You have to be very comfortable with your own skin in the very first place.
The shame of saying no, I think it's a very powerful emotion. And I think this is something Brené Brown had also touched upon in her book about vulnerability and shame. Is there any material that, you have read and has touched you, in terms of similar topics?
Well, honestly, the only thing that comes to my mind is my grandfather and my parents also. So what I have learned is the ability to say no comes in as my second skin. I think that is also a very primal emotion, like fear. How fear keeps you alive. The ability to say no is also your survival, which people have forgotten. And the minute you accept and not say no, what happens? You are the one more trouble. You're the one who's going through the pain. You're the one who's going through every bit of it. So, this is very important where you understand that the ability to say no is equally your instinct of survival.
And I think this boundary setting is especially important in our culture where, we have this tendency to say yes to everything.
Yes,
And
because we are conditioned as from childhood to please our relatives,
Yes.
to please our elders, to say yes to everything, to do it just because you're told to do it, but not explained why you're supposed to do it. So, yes, it also comes from there. But let's say if you are an adult and if you would like to make that choice, there is nothing that can stop you to. As hard it is to say no, it is also that easy. It is a choice that you have to make. And let's say if you say yes to a particular situation, how is it working in your favor? Is it? Question yourself. If it is working in your favor, the answer clearly is yes. But if it is clearly not working in your favor, the answer has to be no. You have to learn to love yourself. So, self love also matters a lot. And honestly, I really love myself. So, I am fully confident of saying no to endless things. There are many people who get very uncomfortable with me saying no, and I'm like, that you need to work on yourself, but not me. Sorry.
Sounds like a you problem.
Sounds like a you problem, not me.
So you've also spoken about trolling in the context of actors, and you've connected it to, expectations and awareness. But do you also want to comment on the impact on mental health of trolling, and what goes on behind the scenes in the psyche of trollers or trolls? I mean,
the psyche behind that. Give me a troll, give me an example, and I'll tell you what goes behind it. Because it's again multiple levels of trolling and different zones. Give me an example of a troll, and I'll tell you what the psyche of a troller is versus what the person affected would be going through.
I think we can go with the example of, Alia Bhatt after the famous Coffee with Karan episode back in the day, where she, I think, said the wrong name for the president or the prime minister or something.
Correct.
Of that sort, and people started trolling on her.
Correct. So, one, just because she's Alia Bhatt and she was on Coffee with Karan, at that point in time, I think she was in her early stages of her career.
Exactly.
And sometimes we can make mistakes. We are just humans.
Yes.
We are just simple humans, basically. And this is no support of Alia or no support of troll. But understand that when you're on a set surrounded by so many people and you are upcoming at your career, your brain is at a fire signal. You're constantly worried about which angle am I looking perfect? How is my body looking? How is the costume looking? Am I looking the perfect in this situation? You become 1,000 times more self-aware. And you're running in that mode constantly. You see, there is no turn off. She is running in that mode constantly. Especially now she's sitting in front of Karan Johar with the other, I think it was with Siddharth Malhotra, right? Yes. So with other actors and everything. So she being also the center of attention. Sometimes we blabber things that we don't mean to say. Because you are on so much of high alert, so much, your brain is processing so much into multiple things that, you sometimes can just blabber something, your brain can just tell you, oh, this was the past president that I remembered and that is how it is. Your brain can just end up saying the wrong name of the president. And that's okay. Simply because she's also a human, she's allowed to make a mistake. Coming from the mentality of the trolls, people feel very uncomfortable when somebody else is a little privileged and they have a position of power. So if Alia has a position where she's reached at that time, I'm only talking about that zone and that time, many people are also uncomfortable with it. So nobody commented on how good her hair looked. Nobody commented on how perfectly her cheekbones on that day of the set were calibrated. Nobody commented on her gua sha thing that she was doing, to make sure that her face looks perfect. Nobody commented on her hair. Nobody commented on her movie. Nobody commented on, how good she looked. Oh, finally, at least she did a good performance, and her performance is getting better with each movie. So you see, there were so many good things about her which were just sidelined, and only one bad thing was focused on. That's exactly the troll psyche, because they want to focus on one bad thing or one wrong thing because that resonates to them. That makes them feel comfortable that, oh, she's not all perfect. It makes them feel comfortable. And that's how it just gets blown out of proportion. And it's a sad thing that it was in numerous numbers, enormous numbers. It was in such a big number that it scares me that such a big population is resonating to this, is resonating to one wrong part of a human being versus all the 100 right things that she must have done.
And I mean, don't you think that also relates to herd mentality, since it's, such a big group?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It does relate to the herd mentality. And that is what I told you. It
Yeah,
scares me because the
exactly.
numbers were enormous.
True, very true.
So,
Mhm.
yes, this is how it goes on both sides. Now, for Alia, all she did was she picked up her self esteem and she never looked back. She educated herself better in terms about geopolitics and she stepped away from the subject because that's not her strongest pursuit. Wisest thing that Alia could have done. Common wisest thing. She didn't further dwell into politics to only prove herself right. Now, see, that's self development. Okay, this didn't go right. As I said, when it doesn't go right, she didn't victimize herself, or neither did she villainize the trolls. She just picked it, learned it, understood, educated herself a little, made herself a little more aware about the political situation, which is not, maybe politics is not my strongest pursuit.
Exactly.
So I don't need to know every cabinet minister.
Exactly.
And if somebody is into political science, they better know every cabinet minister in their cabinet.
Yes.
Simple.
Yes.
But it's not that every single person has to, right? So similarly, Alia did the exact same thing. She kind of picked her lesson, learned, move on, and see where she is today. Perfect. Look at where the trolls are today. Exactly where they are.
Yeah.
Why?
Keyboard warriors.
No, keyboard warriors. Why? Because they're trying to, because they haven't done the self work on themselves.
Yeah.
They haven't seen, okay, how can I make myself better? They are only searching for something that resonates with them. And that's why they are those keyboard mongers.
Absolutely loved that message and the sort of arc of how, Alia transformed and the psyche behind Roll's mind, as we said. You also spoke about the impact of the environment because, Alia was on the sets of KWK. So that also brings me to your interior designer angle because, if there are any aspects within the environment that can make us feel calmer or, more secure.
Absolutely. So there are so many colors that are calming. There are so many neutral factors. When there is a space that is to be designed, you have to understand the possibility of the client's mind.
Yeah.
How is it that they choose to see their space? What is it that the minute they come home, how is it that they want to feel? It is the feeling that I try and create in their spaces for them. To bring them that feel, that comfort that they are looking and longing towards the minute they step home.
Thank you so much, Sanubhay. And, it was such a holistic take from the perspective of a stunt performer and a human performance architect, as well as an aesthetic designer. So thanks a lot for that holistic overview and that all your comprehensive, effusive answers. We really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Honestly, Hema, I really loved the questions that you framed because very few people understand it is not about my personal life. It's not about, my personal side of life, but for the first time, I'm really loving these questions because they are really connected towards the profession and how fear, anxiety, and these real questions like the line between fear, overcompensation, anxiety, self-worth, how they matter in every profession and how they can come around. These are such good questions to, kind of focus on, especially with stunts. Thank you so much for coming up with them.